Hello everyone, my name is Brandy Ellen and I am a goal success life coach. I help the average single mom find a way to get help, confidence, and boost their life one small habit change at a time. If you're interested in working with me, you may go to brandyellen.com/shop and we can work together. However, I'm not talking about habits today. I want to talk a little bit about the climate, the climate of the world, I guess, right? So there's something going on in the world right now. There's a lot of people waking up today. I guess today is the payout day for a lot of the food stamps or SNAP benefits, as they're called in a lot of places. I won't pretend to know all of the terminology, but essentially they're a welfare program when the government subsidizes some of your food costs so that you can have access to buy food, right? That's essentially what the program is for. I have my own opinions about, like, if it gives a little too much, it's gone too far, those sort of things, but today is not the day to have that conversation. Today is the day to have a conversation about humanity and how the average person, like you and me, sometimes needs a leg up, a little helping hand to help us get to the next stage in life. Because sometimes unimaginable things occur in our life. They occurred because we made a choice. I'm a firm believer that where I am today, good, bad, or indifferent, is because of different choices I made in the past, right? I believe that with my whole being, but that does not mean that I deserve to not have access to help from the ones that love me, assistance to help me get back on my feet, or anything like that, right? Because we're all human, we all have experiences, we all have good, bad, and hold on. We all have things that happen to us, right? And sometimes the things that happen to us, our experiences, can change our mind. So being a parent to 3 children helped really change my mind from how I thought things should be in my teens and early 20s to being more open-minded, loving, and compassionate towards those that maybe I don't necessarily understand or agree with, but I know that they're doing their best. So we are all arguing online. There's a lot of people out there saying that people on food stamps do not deserve to have this money that we're paying into. There are people online saying that people that are on food stamps or any form of welfare really are lazy. They won't get up and get a job. They're incapable of helping themselves. They just keep popping out babies and so that they can get financial assistance. Now, I'm not going to say that those are non-truths, right? It's quite possible that those are the cases, and I'm going to go out on a limb and assume some of the people that feel that way, that's either what they were raised to believe, or it's what they've seen and experienced in their world. It's their perception. We live in America. We're entitled to our freedom of speech, and unfortunately, sometimes freedom of speech hurts. Okay, so here's a little bit about my story. Today, I'm 44 years old, and my children are 23. They are 23, 19, and 17, okay? They're all graduated from their charter schools or home schools. They went to public school for a short time. But I'm going to talk about my firstborn, who is now 23 years old. When she was just a baby, when I was pregnant with her, right? Our plan, I was not married, so her dad and I was going to be a stay-at-home mom, and all that sort of stuff, right? But we were really didn't get along very well, right? We argued, we fought, we screamed, yelled, maybe because we were so young, we were hot-tempered, that sort of thing. So we didn't last past 3 months. Our daughter was 3 months old when we broke up, and it was not fun. I was mad at him for a couple of years. It took me a couple of years to get over what happened, and that is not part of the story. So what we're going to do now is we're going to shift into, I had a 3-month-old baby. I was single. And while I would have child support from her dad and emotional support, meaning he would, well, not for me, but for her. So we shared custody. He was involved in her life. Financially, he, was, I believe back then, giving child support. And he was taking her in between breastfeedings until she shifted from not breastfeeding as much, right? So we figured that out and we co-parented for 18 years. But when I first found myself single with a 3-month-old baby, you can imagine my surprise and nervousness of, what am I going to do? Okay? I had quit my full-time job. I had left. I was no longer working at the hospital as a film librarian. That position, gone. I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. That was the plan, right? And we have those dreams, those plans, and then all of a sudden someone does something and it changes. So that's where I was at. And I remember sitting at my grandmother's house And I believe my great grandmother was in the room with me, and I was going to breastfeed my daughter. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, Grena. Like, I have no idea. What am I going to do? I'm a single mom with a little baby. I can't go on assistance because welfare is not for us. I was raised with a limiting belief system, much like many of you are sharing out there. The welfare is not for me. Welfare means that I'm dirty, I'm less than, I'm all the negative, degrading things you could think of. That is what I was raised to believe about the welfare system, right? It's just how it was back then. And back then, food stamps, I believe, were actually like pieces of paper. I'm not sure if it was electronic. It might have been electronic at that time. I'm not sure. But when I was a kid, food stamps were actual like paper food stamps. So like it was semi-embarrassing for people to be on food stamps, right? It was one of those things that there was a little shame with it, right? And I think the shame helped people want to get off that system faster. We might have different opinions about that. But my great grandmother said to me, darling, that's what the system's for. You have been working since you were 13 years old, and here I was 21 years old. I had been working and paying into the system since I was 13. And here I was, 21 years old, newly 21 years old, with a fresh 3-month-old little girl whose father and I had planned to have me be a stay-at-home mom. And so he was working full-time. I had left my full-time job. But due to circumstances that occurred, we were separate. And I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do? And in that moment, my great-grandmother showed me love, compassion, empathy, some grace, perhaps. That sometimes we need to get into these welfare systems, and that these systems were built for this purpose. A single mom with a 3-month-old and no job, and, I could move in with family. Not everyone has that option. I believe I could move in with my mom and stay with her. I believe I did, but mom and I didn't get along so well back then. I don't even know if we get along now under the same roof, right? We're very different. And so now I'm in my space with my mom, and we're at each other and all that thing. Like, there was so many different things that were tough during that time. The last thing I needed to do was wonder if I was going to be able to eat so that I could breastfeed my daughter, right? That's the last thing. Now, you could say that I could go to a church and get donations. I could go to a food pantry and get food because I know of these programs now. I know of these places now. But when I was 21 years old, I didn't know any of those. And my family wasn't the type, with me at least, to do things like that. Like, they weren't gonna make my life easier, but they weren't necessarily gonna make my life harder. I was raised to a different standard, I think, being a firstborn child. But I want to remind you that in that moment, in that room with my great grandmother, I was shown love, compassion, empathy, grace. She reminded me that these systems are not bad, that it doesn't make me less than because I have a 3-month-old girl that I need to feed. Well, I need to feed me so that I could feed my daughter and breastfeed her and have nutrients, so that I could overcome the hardships of what had happened to me, of what had occurred due to choices that her father and I made that were no fault of my 3-month-old baby girl, right? And so when you're sitting here and you're typing really fast, quick-witted, welfare sucks, people on there are lazy, they're no good, remember, please, my dears, remember that you are talking about a human being. You are talking about a person whose story you do not know. Because not once during those times of bashing someone did you invite someone to come on your podcast, your show, your blog, wherever on your social media, to ask them, hey, what is your story of using welfare to get a leg up, to get on your feet, to be where you're at today? And let's hear more success stories of how welfare, food stamps, cash benefits, whatever it is, helped you during a time of desperate need, where you didn't know what else to do. And then today, you're in a completely different spot. All because you let go of your ego, you let go of your pride, and you finally accepted help. Because within 6 months of being on that assistance, I had a full-time job. I got into an apartment. Granted, it was subsidized housing. It was subsidized apartments that I lived in for about a year. But I was on my own with my daughter. I had I think it was like full-time, or close to full-time office job. And within 6 months, I was able to mostly support myself and my daughter. 6 months, right? Now, that doesn't always happen for everyone, right? The times of employment and stuff are different now than it was 21 years ago. I'm feeling like an old person right now. But still, please, The next time you want to judge someone, can you please pause and think about what would you do if you were a single parent with nobody to give you anything other than maybe a room to sleep, and you had to breastfeed your kid, or you had to feed your kid? Would you be stubborn and not take assistance? If so, then your ego is still probably controlling a huge portion of your life. And that's okay. That's your choice. But just because you wouldn't take assistance doesn't mean somebody else out there who is a good person with good intentions will say no to the assistance. They see it as their only way to help them during their hard times. We need more unity. We need more love. We need more light, compassion, understanding. And we should lend people a little bit of grace that we would wish they would lend to us during our trials and tribulations in this life. I hope this message helps you pause and reconsider your place when it comes to assistance, welfare, and other people that you don't understand their story. Let us ask people their stories more.